Hello and welcome to another episode of Graham Hughes' PUBCAST.
And we are in a pub.
We are in a pub. And we have drinks. Actually, you can't really see the table, so we could be anywhere.
We are in a pub.
I'm in my living room.
we are in a pub. We're in Durham again.
We are in Durham. Gavantopoulos, as I like to call it.
Is it?
Brexit Central.
What was the percentage who voted for Brexit in Durham?
Well, actually, in the city centre, there was a majority for Remain. And this happened quite a lot around the country, where you had big metropolitan areas. There was a majority for Remain, and obviously there's a big university here.
Yeah, not in Rotherham, it didn't. It was 67.9% for Rotherham. So what was it for sort of the whole Durham area?
I'm not sure. Okay. I'm not sure. I know Liverpool was 58% Remain, I know Manchester was 60% Remain.
I think Leeds was 55 or something.
We were this week, weren't we, in Manchester?
We were in Manchester. It was great to see you all. Thank you for the encouragement. And
thanks to everyone who came.
I had a really good time. I mean, Manchester laid on its typical weather for us, which
it absolutely pissed down.
It siled it down, and I drove over from Sheffield and Rotherham, went over the Woodhead Pass, and it was actually the Woodhead Pass was actually flooded in parts. It was pretty. It was a pretty long drive there and back, but it was. We had great fun, and we got in the Daily Mail. Did you see the link I put on my? Did I put it on Twitter or FaceTube?
FaceTube, I think.
Right, so we got in the Daily Mail, leading the march into
Castlefield. We had a big blow-up Boris blimp.
Yeah, with Nigel printed on his underpants, which was absolutely terrific. We had faux Bozo there as well.
We did.
And he is terrific. That's the first time I've met him. I've seen some of his videos, but he's terrific. Anyway, so it is Thursday, the 2nd of October.
It is, and we've just seen the new proposal from the government as to what they want to have as a deal with the EU.
And the EU have also seen it and have said...
Computer says no. So let's just delve into this a little bit. Into
the deal, the new deal.
So what the problem is that if it was any other country in Europe trying to leave the EU, it would be relatively straightforward. They would either decide to be part of the customs union or the single market or both. I should explain what the single market and the customs union are.
Yeah, so when it comes to both, that was actually proposed by a group of renegade Labour Party MPs earlier this year, and they called it Common Market 2.0, that they were going to remain. It was basically they were pushing for a Norwegian-style deal, weren't they?
Well, Norway, I think, is in the customs... Is that in the customs union but not in the single market? Or the other way around?
It's in the single market because they've got freedom of movement.
They're in the Schengen area?
Yes, and to be in the Schengen area, that gives you freedom of movement,
okay.
So they're in the single market, because single market covers freedom of movement.
So the single market is basically to do with regulations, standards, essentially. So if you make something in Britain, you know that you can sell it to all the other countries.
So you could sell it to Rotherham, someone in Rotherham, or someone in Rotterdam.
Yeah. The customs union is something slightly different. It just means that certain goods can come in and out of the EU, and they've already been cleared to do that. So, for instance, Turkey is part of the customs union.
Yes,
it's
not part of the single market.
There's still queues at the border, though. I know.
Yes, there are.
I've crossed it many times.
Have you been to Turkey?
I have been to every country in the world. I keep telling you this.
Oh, really?
I love it when I have these conversations and we go, I've been to every country in the world. And they go, oh my God, have you been to Venezuela? And I'm like, yes, I've been to every country in the world. And they go, have you been to Iraq? And I'm like, yeah. And it just goes on.
Have you been to North Korea?
Yes, I've been to North Korea.
How did you get into North Korea?
I crossed the border at the DMZ. I don't like calling it that, but it's what the Americans call it. The demilitarized zone between North Korea and South.
That was at Panmunjom?
Yes.
Where they signed the ceasefire?
Yeah, it's basically half. It's got these huts that straddle the border,
and
half the huts in North Korea and half the huts in South Korea. So as a tourist, you're allowed to sort of walk around the conference table, which it separates two nations. So that side of the table
is South Korea.
Is South Korea, and this side of the table is North Korea. And you can walk around the table.
Anyway, we're sort of going off on a tangent.
Digressing a little bit. So we've got the single market and the customs union, right?
Yep.
So a lot of people thought when they voted for Brexit, including Nigel Farage, that we would be in some sort of agreement with the single market, alignment with the single market and the customs union. Nigel Farage mentioned Norway, and he also mentioned Switzerland.
Yeah.
Both of which in some form or another have agreements on that. So if we want to stay part of the EU, that's fine. But if we want to leave, we've got the choice. Do we want to be part of the single market and the customs union and have our trade deals organised by other countries?
Yeah, so we would be a rule taker,
yes,
not a rule maker.
Or do we want to sack those two things off?
Make our own deals.
And make our own deals, which on face value sounds awful as an idea because you're basically losing the leverage of 27, 28 of the wealthiest, some of the wealthiest countries in the world.
And you're going to cut yourself off from all the trade deals that they've already got.
Yeah, and there was 60 odd free trade deals that the EU have with other countries. There's also 759 deals in general on different commodities.
Things, so
different,
a certain amount of New Zealand lamb can come in
to do with
tariff-free.
Quotas and tariffs and all this boring stuff that's really boring. However, there is a problem with this. So you've got two options. You can either, if you're going to leave the EU, you can stay in the single market and the customs union in some form, or you can leave them both.
Yep.
We can't leave them both without violating the Good Friday Agreement.
And the Good Friday Agreement never came up in the referendum once.
I don't remember anyone talking about it.
Nobody mentioned it at all. And I sent you some links this week about where some phrases, clever people do these analytics. You do it on your YouTube channel. This is where we get the 31% of people watching this. Well, only 31% will watch it to the end.
Yeah.
And we love the new hashtag in the comments, hashtag 31%ers, and all this kind of stuff. But some of the analytics, it was things like no deal didn't start coming into the lexicon until sort of mid-2017.
Yeah.
So none of this was ever mentioned before.
No, we were told we were going to get a deal. It would be the easiest deal in history. It would be a good deal.
Nobody
That's what
mentioned
we were told.
the Good Friday Agreement at all. And even in the government booklet that said leaving the EU will mean leaving the single market and the customs union. That said it in the government sponsored literature, not vote leave. This was David Cameron's instruction about what the vote would mean. What happened was that it said we will leave the customs union and the single market, and it never mentioned the Good Friday Agreement at all. Right?
That's because they didn't think about it. They also didn't think about the effect on Gibraltar. It's a whole other podcast.
That's another PUBCAST.
But yeah, so we have this real big problem that as part of the Good Friday Agreement, it essentially says that you're not allowed to put any border infrastructure on the island of Ireland. And this is what I mean. If Luxembourg wants to leave the EU, it would be relatively straightforward.
Because they can just build a fence.
They don't have a very important post-war peace treaty that has meant 20 years of relative peace in a region based on the idea of there being free flow of people and goods across a specific border. It's the only entity, it's the only part of the whole of the EU that has this particular unique
situation.
Yeah. And what it means is we've got two choices because we have two choices because the Brexit that was promised, this is Seb Dance, did you see he said this? The Brexit that was promised is undeliverable because of the Good Friday Agreement. The Brexit that is deliverable is undesirable because it means that we stay part of the single market and the customs union, but we don't get a say in it anymore.
Yeah,
we don't get a say in the trade deals that go down or what the
or any of the rules,
or
any of the rules. I mean, so that we are literally rule takers, not rule makers.
And there's something else that I just want to point out. It's not just about us, as in the UK. And I'm not even going to talk for a second about the problems we're causing to our closest neighbours and some of our NATO allies. We are the representative of the Commonwealth in the EU at the moment.
Oh yes, we are.
We leave, it's just going to be little old Malta and half of Cyprus. And they will be representing the Commonwealth. Yeah. And they don't have the muscle to say to the EU, we want a massive free trade quota for lamb from New Zealand. Why do you want that? Because we feel like we have an affinity with New Zealand that the French don't, the Germans don't.
No.
Why would anyone else push for that? And so we're not just leaving Northern Ireland behind, we're not just leaving Gibraltar, we're not just annoying all our neighbours, we're also kind of throwing the whole Commonwealth, our representation of the Commonwealth with the EU, into the walls. No one's talked about this.
And there was an interesting thing that you touched on there as well, when you were talking about the trade deals, and people say, well, we can lose the trade deals and we'll get one with the United States of America. But we won't. Because despite what President Fart says, and he says, oh, my mate, Prime Minister Penis is first in the queue for a trade deal, the United States underwrote the Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah.
And
the Irish lobby in America is really strong.
And they're going to, and the House, is it?
And that's
is
our
it the
fault, by the
representatives?
way. That's our
is it
fault.
the House of Representatives?
Yes.
The House of Representatives will never go for a deal if we are seen to have breached the Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah. And
it's as simple as that.
And that's just not a Democrat thing. There are Republicans who would stop it as well, because they've got Irish ancestry, and they will not be happy with Ireland being treated in this way.
And again, too, as you were just about to say, there's that many Irish people in the United States because we, the British, forced them there, didn't we? Are we the bad guys? We've done a video about that.
But what that does is, it means that you've got to understand the wealth of the world is limited. There's a certain amount of wealth, a certain amount of GDP the world has got, and people in the world have a certain amount of money they can spend on stuff. Now, the EU comprises of a full quarter of the world's GDP. America is another quarter of the world's GDP. It's got a slightly larger proportion than even the EU. America's a very wealthy country. It's only got 320 million people, whereas the EU's got over 500 million. Over 500 million people live in the EU.
Yeah.
But those two entities, you take them away, and you're left with half the wealth of the world. And a good chunk of that is China. Take that away and take away Japan, who have a comprehensive free trade deal
agreement with the
EU. And you're left with just a quarter of the world's GDP split between over 160 countries. All of which I've been to, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to stress this more because I don't go on about it enough. I saw a guy that I've known for about a year and a half here in Durham. And he said, well, where have you been? I said something about, the travel stuff. And he went, what? I went, you do know I've been to every country in the world. He went, no, you've never mentioned it. So I'm like, I really need to start mentioning this more.
Can you bring some of your books in and we'll start plugging it again?
Yeah. Cheers. But so basically this is the...
But when you look at the wealth of China...
Yeah.
And people say, well, we can sell things to China. No, we can't, because there is a lot of money in China.
There's also a lot of people.
But there's 1.6 billion people there, so that they know of. Because some people they don't even know exist because of the one-child policy. People were accidentally having 2 or 3 children, or they'd have 2 or 3 overseas and then take them back, but they wouldn't sort of register them. They'd keep that a bit quiet, And so there may be more. But the problem is that whilst there's a lot of millionaires and billionaires, there's a huge number. The country with the single biggest number of billionaires is China. But there's such a big population that it waters down the GDP. So the GDP per capita is only about $8,500 a year.
Yeah.
So your average Joe in China isn't going to be queuing up to buy a British-made Mini.
Do you know the same thing happens at Russia? Because Russia likes to present itself as this great big global powerhouse because it's still got these crappy old nuclear weapons from the 1960s.
They're getting a bit destabilised.
I watched a video about the tech behind the nuclear weapons in America, and they went to one of these nuclear depots and they were still using 5.25-inch floppy drives. In the computer system.
The proper old floppy
They were
drive.
actually floppy. You tell a kid, why is it called a floppy disk? It's hard. No, it used to be proper floppy.
Yeah.
But unbelievable. Anyway, but when you break down a GDP per capita, countries like
Russia.
Switzerland shoot to the top, and countries like India and Russia shoot right down the league because and shared out amongst a huge population. I keep stressing this. In India, the average wage is less than £4 a day.
So yes, these people are getting paid a pittance in places like Sri Lanka, which Sri Lanka used to be Ceylon, and that used to be part of that used to be part of the British Empire. It was part of British India, wasn't it? It was part. Am I correct in saying it was part of the Raj? Or?
No, I think it was kind of always separate. Because
Right.
Sri Lanka is actually a Buddhist country nominally.
Right, yeah.
Well, it's the main religion.
Right.
Whereas India is more Hindu.
Right. So it was part of British India, though, wasn't it? In effect, and there's not many people in Sri Lanka are going to be buying Burberry handbags. Which is another British brand that they're pushing throughout the world. So, especially if they're making.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, there are other countries that will buy our stuff. So, but it's a question of whether we really want to sell some of this stuff to them. So, a really good example is lamb. Okay, so at the moment, 30% of our lamb is exported, and 90% of that goes to the EU. Suddenly, it's slapped with this massive WTO tariff because we've got no trade deals.
Which is a tax.
Because no deal means no deals. We'll have to quickly look for other places to sell our lamb. Now, one place you could consider is the Arabian Peninsula. You've got Saudi Arabia,
Qatar.
you've got UAE, Qatar, you've got Bahrain, you've got Kuwait.
But you're going to be struggling to sell British lamb into those countries.
Well, you are, because they have to be killed in a certain way, a religiously halal way.
But
which means that if we do sell our lamb to those countries, they most likely want to have a live export. Now,
which Australia does.
Now, you imagine, a live import, because for them it'll be an import.
Yeah.
Now, you imagine a nice, cute, woolly lamb from Wales that's used to being up in the mountain air, and it's always quite cool, on a cargo ship going through the Suez Canal and into the Red Sea,
yeah.
the warmest sea in the world, sandwiched between the Sahara and the Western Desert, and on the other side, the Arabian Desert. It's really, really, really hot. It's
a little bit
insanely
toasty.
hot.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone who's crossed that sea on a knackered old cargo ship?
Probably you.
From Saudi Arabia to Eritrea.
Probably you.
Yeah, me. Possibly the only person who's done that trip.
No, actually, my father probably did as well. He was a sailor in
It probably wasn't a knackered old Saudi Arabian vessel.
Have you seen Shell tankers?
I watched England getting kicked out of the World Cup in 2010 on a TV screen. Like, the guy was outside holding up a dish as we were moving across the board.
To follow the signal.
This poor little cabin boy, he was only about 16 or something. We're like, to the left, to the left. Anyway, the point being that you've got to ask the question, do we actually want to sell our produce to this? Because that would actually be quite cruel to take that animal from the UK, take them all the way around, because it'll take a week or so to get there.
But there are live animal exports from Australia, and a lot of it goes to the Middle East, and a lot of it goes to Indonesia because of the religious significance of how these animals are slaughtered. Okay. So it can be done.
Yeah.
But the problem is these markets have already been established. So we're going to have to try and break into an established market.
Yeah. Let's say, do you fancy having lamb every day? How does that sound?
Well, I quite like lamb.
But this is it. Even if we double our trade with the United States, magically, somehow, maybe we start making really great movies instead of just giving all our IP to the Americans to make the movies, because we can't be bothered making our good ideas ourselves. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, James Bond. Anyway, go on. One of the things that's happened this week is Boris Johnson, the known liar Johnson, who lied to the Queen, has now decided that he's going to give the EU 2 days to decide on a deal that has taken the British government 3 years to put together.
Yeah.
And the deal is, he said there wouldn't be a border in Ireland.
No, there's gonna all through these last 2 years. There's going to be no border.
No, there isn't going to be a border because there's going to be 2.
He's now said they're going to be 2. But they're going to be 5 or 10 miles from the border.
Yes, because that satisfies the no infrastructure on the border part of the Good Friday Agreement.
No, it doesn't.
Don't forget, the Good Friday Agreement, it was written in terms that didn't envisage Britain leaving the
making
EU.
such a stupid monumental balls up of their...
They're leaving the EU.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
balls up of a decision. But anyway, so, but it doesn't matter where you put the border. It's still a border.
Yeah. But also the idea that
whether
you can
it's 5 meters or 5 miles, it doesn't matter. It's a border.
But the fact that you can check things in a factory, so you have somewhere making chicken pies, right, and you have it checked in the factory and then put onto the lorry, and the lorry is all electronically tagged and everything, and off it goes from the north to the Republic of Ireland. What's to stop the lorry stopping outside on the side of the road and taking all and putting something else in there,
like
putting bombs in or guns or
anything,
anything you want, and then that gets into the EU, no problem. And then once it's in the EU, it's in the customs union of the EU, so it won't get checked again. Drugs. I mean, look, if there's any drug dealers watching this, I mean, I'm sure.
Well, they've already said
that they're all for Brexit. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, but
that's every racist, every communist, every idiot, and now every drug dealer.
People trafficker.
Every
people traffickers are going to love it.
But why would any country in the world? Imagine if Nigeria said to us, "Hey, Britain, how you doing?" And we said, "Oh, what's up, Nigeria?" And say, "Listen, we want to be able to just move anything we want from our country to your country without checking it." We'd be like, "What?"
Could you imagine? Yeah, I mean, like Nigeria say, "Yeah, we're just going to ship everything in, and you're not going to check it." I mean, the Daily Mail would literally have a field day, wouldn't they? I mean,
they'll freak out. The Mail on Sunday is actually being sued by Harry and Princess Sparkle.
Yeah,
the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are suing the Mail on Sunday.
But it's not for privacy, is it? It's for copyright.
Is it? That's interesting.
Because the
letter that they got hold of.
Yeah, because the contents of the letter are actually copyright. So
that's interesting, because the Mail famously, well, not famously to anyone watching this, but famously to me, once took one of my videos off YouTube that was doing rather well and put it on their site. They re-uploaded it onto their own site and made a lot of money out of the advertising revenue, until I noticed and sent them an email that I pretended was from a lawyer saying cease and desist, and they did.
Did they pay you the money?
No.
I bet your actual viewing figures went down because they were on the Daily Mail website.
I effing hate the Daily Mail. They're one of the newspapers that killed Princess Diana. Straight up. Yeah. They did that. And now that Harry and Meghan are suing the newspaper, the Mail, do you think that will stop anyone reading the Mail? Anyone who's a royalist or
no?
Because I'm not a particular royalist, but I really support them on this.
Yeah, I do. But the thing is, I remember the day Princess Diana died, right? And my sister-in-law, and she still gets the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. But her Sunday Mail actually was slagging off Princess Diana because it was the first edition.
It was.
But her mother...
It was about a dress sense.
But her mother got the second edition, which was...
Oh, she was
Death
the best
of the
person ever.
Yeah.
Except when we were slagging her off and calling
a couple of hours before,
Yeah.
So
there was just a sort of poison pen article written by some god awful columnist, basically slagging off Princess Diana's dress sense.
And then they had to quickly change the printers.
Sorry. No, we love her. She's amazing.
Yeah, she was great.
This immediate U-turn of the tabloid press.
But that's the Daily Mail for you. And
well, that's all of them. They were all just as bad, Adam. Well, it was the Mirror, which is the left-wing one, that printed the pictures of the British troops, these fake pictures of British troops urinating on prisoners.
Wasn't that under Piers Morgan's watch?
It was under Piers Morgan.
And what do we think of Piers Morgan?
He's a guy who calls you a snowflake, and yet absolutely loses his shit over the idea of having a vegan sausage roll. It's all right, Piers, you don't have to eat one.
And the other thing, Piers, is I'm really glad Jeremy Clarkson punched you on Concord.
Did he punch him?
Yeah.
Did he? Yeah. Oh, I don't like Jeremy Clarkson, I like him now.
I mean,
oh God, I'm so conflicted.
Anyway, so
the enemy of my enemy of my enemy of my enemy. Anyway,
right. So
can we talk about the deal then?
So the deal. So they've changed the deal, right? So there's not going to be a backstop. But
what was the backstop?
It was an insurance policy.
What it entailed, essentially, was the EU said, listen, we've got a problem with Ireland because we can't have a customs border there, and you want to not be part of the customs union, you want to be not part of the single market. So, can we put the border in the Irish Sea?
But this was a British request.
No, this was an EU request. They said, can we put it in the Irish Sea? Theresa May, knowing that the DUP held the power of balance because she needed their 10 votes in order to get anything through the House of Commons, said,
that's right. Yeah.
no, we want to go one step further and we want to keep the whole of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in the EU's customs union and single market until a solution is found. And the thing is, this is I guess you can call it disingenuous, but I don't know if they were pretending or but everyone knows that until we reach Star Trek levels of technology, you are not going to be able to have an invisible border between two entities that have different rules on standards and quotas and tariffs.
Yeah.
You just can't do it because there's thousands of vehicles crossing the border every hour.
So it was
from the 200 places you can cross the border.
300. There's over 300 border
I'm sure
crossings.
some of them are like a field. I mean,
there's
your backpack full of drugs and just walk over the border.
Well, just drive over. But the thing is that it was a Theresa May idea that because she knew that Arlene Foster, who, I hate to say this about people on how they look, but she actually does look nasty.
I think she looks like little me from the Moomins, like grew up.
Well, I was going to say she looked
the
like
little one who like grew up to be like horrific.
But she's just
been eating
looks evil,
poison Moomin juice.
She looks like a bulldog that's licking piss off a nettle. Anyway. But the point is that Arlene Foster was basically bunged £1 billion. Or was it 10 billion quid? It was a lot of money.
It wasn't to her personally, but it was like, we will invest
this in...
I think a lot of British taxpayers would absolutely lose their shit if they found out how much money
Northern Ireland costs.
How much we subsidised Northern Ireland. And they had a referendum, you see, in Ireland back in the 1920s. And what happened was, it was overwhelmingly for Home Rule. Like overwhelmingly, not like 52%, 48%. We're talking like 76%. And instead of going, okay, fair enough, that's the will of the people of Ireland, they went, what we'll do is we'll just draw a line around a lot of the people who voted to remain and call that Northern Ireland. And the problem is, it's not even a county border because County Ulster, which is what Northern Ireland is.
Yeah.
It's only 6 parts of
Ireland.
Of Ulster.
Right.
There's 3 parts of Ulster that are not in Northern Ireland.
Oh, they're in the Republic of Ireland.
They're in the Republic of Ireland.
Blimey.
So that border is mental. Like that border, it just bears no sense to anything. It's not going along a particular river. It's not going along a fracture line of geography or something like that.
No, it
is literally
completely random.
It's completely
because there's that guy who, after the Good Friday Agreement was signed, he literally extended his house, and if he's in his kitchen, he's in Northern Ireland or something, and if he's in his bathroom, he's in the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah. But this is the thing, like, so you've got this crazy border. There are other crazy borders out there. Any fellow map fans want to go and check out the border between Kyrgyzstan, that's Kyrgyzstan, not Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. That's a crazy border. They have little enclaves and exclaves all over the shop. I think that Stalin was drunk when he was drawing the map. And then you've got the border between Bangladesh and India, which very similarly has lots of little exclaves and enclaves, although they have recently just sorted all that out. And there are so many of them. But a couple of years ago, it was rather hilarious the way those borders were set up, because they were the kind of half historical borders, half who was living there at the time.
Just
you drew a line
it was
around
just
them.
Literally, it was almost completely random.
And it was never a different kingdom. It was never a different
country.
In history, it was never a different thing.
Yeah, it's anyway.
Completely made up by the British.
So the deal. So Theresa May said, right, I'm going to bung the DUP £1 billion, for
their votes.
investment, for their votes,
Do you
for
think
their
it's
support.
$1 billion? It might be more or less. Just
But
correct us in the notes.
in the notes, yeah. But if and then Mark Pudding-Francois and his mates in the ERG. Mark Pudding-Francois, who has fought and died in every war Britain's been involved with since the Battle of Waterloo, I think.
No, since the Battle of Hastings.
Since the Battle of Hastings. True blue Brit there. He never voted for the deal. Boris Johnson did once, as did Jacob Rees-Goebbels. And
Voted for Theresa May's deal.
And now they're saying, oh, well, that was an undemocratic backstop. Via usually Dominic Turnip. So Dominic the Turnip Raab he's now saying it's the undemocratic backstop, and they've come up with an idea that after all this time, even 2 weeks ago, saying that there's going to be no border, that they're going to have 2 borders, and there's going to be a border down the Irish Sea.
Yeah, because the border in Ireland isn't going to involve agri-foods in some way. But actually, there's some precedent with this, because at the moment, because of the BSE crisis, they do have different standards with Northern Ireland to the rest of Britain. And Ian Paisley famously said, my people are Irish, but my beef. Sorry,
no, my people are British.
But my beef is Irish.
And get out the fucking car now.
No, that was Sean Bean in the film Patriot Games.
Sheffield guy. Yeah.
Anyway, so essentially what we have seen our government give to the EU and to Ireland, our closest neighbour, one of our major trading partners, the country that we trade more with than Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa and China put together.
The BRICS countries, in fact. How could I miss it? We trade more with Ireland than all of the BRICS countries.
Put together.
Anyway, so now Arlene Foster apparently is on side with this deal.
Yes.
Because she said we need to compromise. They didn't do it with Theresa May. They've certainly not done it since the referendum.
Why is it a compromise?
Who knows? I mean, this is the problem with all of these people now. What happens is they say, we're not doing this, we're not doing that, this, that and the other. Then they change their mind literally the next day. When you're dealing with a Prime Minister who says things like, this is not a press, this is not anything for the press, and a distraught father is saying, who the fuck are these? It's the press, they're filming this. How can you know why they've changed their mind? Mark Francois is now saying that he supports this deal. You know, the ERG are likely to vote for it. That's because they know that they've got literally nothing left. So, and I think it was Margaret Thatcher who once said, when all they've got left is insults, they've lost the argument. When all they've got left are insults.
Wasn't that Confucius?
No, it was Margaret Thatcher said this. Well, it might have been Confucius, but Confucius also said, if you're going to go through a turnstile sideways, you're going to Bangkok. Anyway, it was. Don't you just love my bad jokes?
Yeah.
He's not going to edit that out. Anyway, so Mark Francois is now they're talking about signing for this deal because I think they're really scared that they can feel Brexit slipping away.
I don't think. I think they're just saying they're going for it because they want to make the EU out to be the bad guys. The EU won't agree to our deal. The fact that they called the Act of Parliament that stopped us leaving without a deal.
A surrender bill.
A surrender bill. We're surrendering to the enemy because the EU is our enemy. 22 members of the EU are in NATO.
Yeah.
That includes us, by the way. So 21 other members of the
NATO
EU are in
the EU. So we've got this.
These are our allies.
Weird situation.
These are our biggest trading partners, and we're behaving like a spoilt brat.
Well, we're not. And it's the government are, and it's these people in power.
Well, it's not just the government. You got people calling up the radio stations to say, "I completely support this. Let's act like idiots and tell everyone in the world that we don't like them very much. We're leaving the Commonwealth behind. We're leaving the EU behind. We're leaving America behind because we're saying to America, well, we don't care about Ireland." And they're like, "Well, we do."
Yeah.
Okay, so who have we got left? We've got China.
and they're not very friendly.
Literally, that's it.
Yeah.
That's our only hope. And if we have a trade deal with China, China's much bigger than Britain, by the way. If you didn't know that already, it's much bigger.
Physically, it's
and it's
massive,
got more money as well.
and it's got more people.
If you have a trade deal with them, we're going to be the junior partner.
Well, we're going to be the junior partner with most of these trading blocks.
The big ones, yeah. Yeah.
So.
No, but I mean, if we want to do a deal with CARICOM in the Caribbean community, that might be great, except for the fact that CARICOM's got hardly any money.
Yeah.
And we don't make things that they really want to buy.
Yeah.
Are we going to send all these Nissan Qashqais over to St. Lucia?
Oh no, because Nissan are now looking at not producing the Qashqai here in the event of no deal, because that has changed from 2016 when Theresa May went to them and said nothing's going to change. Now they're facing very real difficulties with their supply.
Because the WTO tariff on car parts is 9.8% coming in, and on assembled cars it's 9.8% going out. Actually, it's not 9.8% on car parts. That's the baseline. I think that depending on the car part, it goes up and down.
Yeah, it could do.
There are some specific car parts that are
well
like just dead expensive for whatever reason, whatever fuel they use on the mineral they use to put it together.
So, getting back to the agreement, Graham.
Yeah. Well, it's not an agreement. It's a proposal by the British government that they know is absolutely untenable. They know it can't be done, because it would mean that if a British company imported a lot of chlorinated chicken, which is banned in the EU, genetically modified corn, which is banned in the EU, or hormone-injected beef, that's banned in the EU.
From Australia, yes.
And put it into a pie in Northern Ireland, they could then just move it across the border.
So basically what that proposal is they're trying to...
But we'll do our own checks. That's what Boris Johnson's saying. He's saying we'll do our own checks in our own time, and you have to trust us. Now, what has Britain been doing really good at in the last few years? What's Britain been doing really well at?
Shooting itself in the foot.
Establishing trust with our international neighbours.
No.
So, the deal that's been presented by Boris Johnson is untenable. The EU and the Irish government cannot say no, cannot say yes to this thing.
The EU have said today that they're open to further negotiations about it.
Yeah.
But realistically, I mean, their answer has been no. Really, hasn't it?
And this plays into the Brexiteer Tory handbook, because what they want to do is take us into an election in which they say it is the people versus Parliament.
And we've not got Brexit done
because of
the EU.
The EU stopped us from having our cake and eating it. And making the EU out to be the enemy, and making the Remoners, like Adam and I, out to be the enemy as well.
Traitors.
Traitors. The language that is used around Brexit is an absolute disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And someone complained to me about the Leavers being called stupid. Oh yeah, but your side call us stupid. There has been no national headline in any of the left-wing papers calling explicitly people who voted Leave stupid. There have been headlines, people calling people who are Remainers, or even some people who aren't necessarily Remainers, but support, the judges, that we're being called
enemies of the people.
We're being called traitors. We're being called collaborators, which is disgraceful.
Yeah. In fact, in the Mail on Sunday this week, when we were in Manchester, there was articles. The headline was that the EU had paid lawyers as collaborators to get the Ben Act through, and this was completely made up.
Collaborators. Now, I'm sorry, but I don't know of any incidents in history, and I've only got a degree in it, so I don't know everything, in which a group of people were pushed up against a wall and shot for being stupid. Because stupid people are useful to people who are, evil.
Yeah.
But collaborators, saboteurs, enemies of the people.
Yeah. The judiciary.
Have they been put up against the wall and shot? Yes.
Yes.
On many occasions.
In fact, one complete nut job believed that people who wore spectacles were more intelligent, so he had them shot.
Had to die. That was Pol Pot in Cambodia.
The Khmer Rouge.
The killing fields of the 1970s, when they had this big anti-intelligentsia.
Well, it was to get people back to the farms. Yeah,
I've been to Cambodia. I've seen.
It's just tragedy, isn't it? It was. I mean, I remember walking along this path that was white, and I said, "What are we walking on here?" And they said, "It's bone. It's fragments of bone."
And so we've got this situation now where we're set up to have a general election, and it is going to be a case of Boris Johnson. Here's the plan. He makes an unreasonable proposition to the EU and seems reasonable because it's complex and we can't be asked.
And he gives them an unreasonable time frame to look at it.
Yeah, they've got 2 days to look at this unreasonable thing, but it's quite complex and it involves different trading standards and different monitoring standards, and it's based on you trusting us to do the right thing, even though we might not do the right thing, whatever, right? He knows they're going to say no. And when they say no, he can say, the EU is stopping us leaving the EU. Because the EU doesn't want us to be shackled to the EU anymore, which pisses me off because I hate that term being used in this instance because it is the idea that we are enslaved to the EU.
And we're not.
Which has been made by some of the people on the Leave side.
But on the Leave side...
That's disgraceful. We're the people who enslaved other people around the world.
Yeah.
And we're the people who other countries celebrate independence from.
Well, yeah, I mean, us and others, but I mean, we the sun never set on the British Empire, did it? So that's. But the thing is, right?
It did. Brexit.
Yeah. Boris Johnson, because it was last week that it was announced that he had acted unlawfully in proroguing Parliament.
He had lied to the Queen.
I'm just going to stick with he acted unlawfully.
He lied to the Queen.
But he, and also Jacob Rees-Goebbels,
lied to the Queen.
Head of the Privy Council, and what he said in a cabinet meeting as well was he was criticising the judiciary, our independent judiciary, and people were phoning up the LBC saying, and there was that one tweet that I think I sent to you as well, Graham, that it said, this shows how the EU have infiltrated our judiciary. 11 Supreme Court judges have been infiltrated. I mean, Lady Hale, with the spider brooch on her, which is a new fashion, right? Lady Hale, she's 74. She's 74. Talk about playing the long game. I mean,
well, this is what I was going to come to.
This is how paranoid these people
are. This is
what
I was going to come to. So we're looking like we're going to have a general election because we're in a minority government situation.
Yes, because...
And the rhetoric is being ramped up, and it's all about the war because for millions of people in this country, the Second World War hasn't ended in their head, and they want the children of this nation to go through the horrific shit that the children of the 1940s had to go through of rationing, air raids,
no chocolate,
maybe dying for no good reason other than, someone's bombing you, or actually, in the case of leaving the EU, no good reason at all. But that's what they want. They want Britain to prove itself. They want it to show that it can stand on its own 2 feet. They have this emotional attachment to the idea that the war isn't over, and we still need to win it, we still need to keep fighting, and that our NATO allies are not actually our allies at all, and that our real ally is actually Russia. Because it's still the Second World War, and we can ignore the fact that Stalin just kills loads of his own people because he said he'll help us out. What a weird situation to find yourself in. However, if we had an opposition, I wouldn't be so concerned. But do we have an opposition, Adam?
No. No. We don't. And the thing is, they're talking about a vote of no confidence again in the Houses of Parliament.
Yeah.
But what you've got to think about is, who's going to be caretaker Prime Minister? And now at the SNP, and the SNP is sounding increasingly desperate as well because they just want to stop no deal now. We've gone from wanting to sort of have a second referendum to now stopping Demonic Cummings, who is running the country. Make no mistake. I mean, even today, a Tory peer in the House of Lords has said Demonic Cummings should have his parliamentary pass revoked because he was been found
In
contempt of Parliament.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it.
But this is the problem.
We
don't have
we can't
effective
have
opposition.
a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson's government because Jeremy Corbyn doesn't command the support of the Liberal Democrats, the 21-22 rebels.
Actually, if he commanded the support of the Liberal Democrats, it would make no difference whatsoever. Because the numbers just don't add up. The Liberal Democrats are only 18 MPs.
Yeah, but they'd have the SNP, they'd have the 21 rebels, they'd have the Lib Dems, they'd have Plaid Cymru.
They wouldn't have the 21 rebels.
They would if they didn't have Jeremy Corbyn.
That's what I'm saying. Under Jeremy Corbyn, the Lib Dems aren't saying no to this because they're
saying no. They're saying no to Jeremy Corbyn.
Actually, no, but they don't hold the balance of power. Even if they said yes to it, the numbers aren't there. The figures just aren't there. Here's a figure for you. Jeremy Corbyn's approval rating is now gone down to -60. 6-0. That's a lower approval rating than Donald Trump, who is currently about to be impeached for crimes against the American people because he decided that, the original Watergate, where, someone broke into a hotel room to steal some papers to find out what the other guy's plan was in the election, his rival, and he wanted to go one step further. He called the premier of a foreign nation,
Ukraine,
and said, "Can you get me some dirt on my political opponents?"
Which was Joe
Biden.
Yeah.
So Jeremy Corbyn has a lower approval rating than him. And I'd like to list a few mathematical impossibilities. So the first one is the square root of -1 written as a rational number. Impossible. The second is a prime number greater than 2. That's an even number. The third one is an odd number that is the sum of 2 odd numbers. The fourth is somebody in control of a political party in any country in the world that has a -60 approval rating winning a general election.
Yeah, not going to happen.
Mathematical, forget about politics for a moment, mathematical impossibility.
Yeah.
And today on my Twitter, I wrote, in one word, sum up why Labour is so far behind in the polls, because the last couple of polls that have come out have shown the Lib Dems actually gaining more of the vote than Labour.
They're ahead of Labour.
That's happened before, by the way, in 2010, we should add. But it's significant because almost everyone who responded to that said Corbyn, except for the people who support Corbyn who said media. That's very interesting because the media has existed
for a long
for
time.
Centuries.
Yes.
And you can say, well, we didn't have social media back then, but
but look at the influence that the Sun had before we had social media.
It's
you
the
remember
Sun
the
what won it.
The Neil Kinnock thing.
Yeah,
if this man wins, the last person to leave Britain should turn the light out, and it was him as a globe, a light globe. Yeah.
The Sun what won it was the 1992 election.
Yeah, and then they switched sides to support New Labour and Tony Blair. So, if they're allowed to change their minds, why can't the British public about Brexit?
Well, politicians have voted again and again on the withdrawal agreement. They had another vote on who they wanted to be leader of their party. It wasn't like there was one vote.
Because Theresa May should have been, until the end of December, leader of the Tory party, until December this year. And they booted her in January. They changed the rules in the 1922 committee.
I didn't know they changed the rules.
They did.
She just said,
no,
sod this, I'm never going to win.
No, they changed the rules.
Wow. They changed the rules to suit themselves.
Well, we know that, don't we? So, Graham.
Yes.
So what else is happening is that they're proroguing Parliament on Tuesday, but the Queen's speech is going to be on the following Monday.
That's not so bad. That's
not so bad because it's Wednesday and Thursday are the parliamentary sitting days. Friday, MPs normally go back to their constituencies, and then they return to work on Monday. So they'll return to work on, I think it's Monday the 14th of October. I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments if that's wrong. So that's not so bad, but there's now an expectation that Bozo Johnson will write the Queen's speech, because the Prime Minister writes the Queen's speech, and there's an expectation that will then change. He'll politicise the Queen. They are now worried that he's politicising the Queen again. And it's also come out that the Queen has sought advice on how to sack a Prime Minister.
Do you know what though? This could all end today.
If Jeremy Corbyn had dropped dead.
Yes.
Sounds harsh, but...
Or just resigned.
Resign is a better word.
We have one man standing in the way of
Catastrophe.
the Tories essentially reinventing themselves as the Brexit party, no
Company
longer
limited.
concerned about the middle ground or being a one nation Tory. All the one nation Tories have left or are leaving.
Yep.
And being a far right lunatic fringe party who just wants to bang on about World War II until the day we die. Now, people say we're sick of Brexit, and I am absolutely 100%
There's
sick
a lot of
Brexit.
I just want to go fatigue.
I just want to go to sleep and wake up in a better age, in a better time.
Yeah.
But the fact is that if we go ahead with this, all we're going to talk about for the next 50 years
Is Brexit.
is bloody Brexit.
Yeah. Because
we wanna
this is
stop
just the
it-
divorce.
If we want to stop it, we have to stop Brexit.
Yeah.
And they just go, look, let's have another referendum, only this time no one's allowed to cheat. I'm
And
sick of hearing, oh, but 17.4
The democratic
million
will
people.
of 17.4 million
17.4 million people. 17, the population of the United Kingdom, of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is 66 million.
Yeah.
So that's just over a quarter of the population of this country voted for something, right?
Yeah.
And it was something that wasn't very well defined at the time. So let's get some definition on this. Let's put some flesh on the bones and say this is what's going to happen. You can have a no deal, where there's going to be shortages of medicine and food.
and-
My father, who's dependent on medicine because he's got dementia and heart problems, my dad will die if he doesn't get his drugs.
People with who are insulin-dependent diabetics.
They'll die as well.
Yep.
People will literally die. Or we can be a member of the single market and the customs union, in which case Brexit makes no sense at all, because it just means that we're in the same situation except we lose our MEPs, so we don't get a say in the direction of the EU.
We are rule takers, not rule makers. But on that one, Nigel Farage, during the referendum, did say we could have a deal like Norway. We could have a deal
Norway.
like Norway, like Switzerland.
Rule takers, by the way.
Yeah, but we'd be happy with that because
Yeah.
it would keep the single market and the customs union for us, and all of these problems would disappear.
Well, not all of them.
A lot of them.
The fact that Labour had a free-line whip to activate Article 50 with no amendments, no provisos, no roadmap. They just literally handed over the largest segment of sovereignty and power to the executive of this nation. And if it wasn't for the fact that Theresa May
and Gina Miller
stupidly had an election, which she didn't need to have, we wouldn't actually have to have a general election until next year under the Fixed Term Parliament Act, then this would all be a done deal by now.
Yeah, but the other thing as well is that the only person, well, not the only person, but one of the most prominent people who is actually opposing the government is getting called all kinds of things, and she's worrying for her children's sake, and that's Gina Miller. And
Can we just pick up on that? Because last week we said that the court case was brought by Gina Miller. We also want to mention Joanna Cherry, and we also want to mention
John Major.
and Joy Lamont, who also fought the cases. There were actually two separate cases that came together in the
Supreme Court. There was the one in Scotland and one in England, wasn't there?
There's a lot more people. Obviously, Gina Miller's been seen as a figurehead.
She's been a figurehead. So, yeah, that's a fair point.
There were people in the comments and they said, you need to mention these other people. And yes, I'm sorry
we do.
That was an error.
That was our bad.
We would like to rectify that.
Yeah, but Gina Miller has, that sort of first thing about the government triggering Article 50 without putting it to a parliamentary vote, that was Gina Miller.
Yeah.
And look at the abuse that she's getting. People saying we know where your kids go to school. It's just staggering. So anyway, we've gone on a wee while.
We'll have to wrap it up now. But
so much to talk about.
Suffice to say, the way things are going, it looks like we're going to have to. Boris Johnson's going to be told by the EU, we can't do this this dickhead deal. Because basically it's like saying, I'd like to buy your house for a £5, and you saying, no, why would I sell my house for a £5? And then going, oh, you're so unreasonable. Oh, God, look at you being you're intransigent. Surrender, monkey. Grrr, you make me so angry. So essentially that's going to happen. And then what the government will do is, under Dominic Cummings, who tells them what to do, he'll say, make the most of this. Make the EU out to be the bad people who are being, you were willing to compromise and they weren't willing to compromise, even though it wasn't a compromise. And I hope we've explained why it wasn't a compromise.
Boris Johnson said today, I'm trying to build a bridge across this chasm. He's fucking full of shit. Anyway, sorry, I had a little swear there. Right.
But what's going to happen is we're going to have a general election and we have no effective opposition.
And that's the problem.
We had the Lib Dems who were tainted with teaming up with Tories.
Yeah.
All the Tories. And we have Her Majesty's opposition, the main opposition party, who on current polling will be lucky to get 160 seats.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is that any of the fair-minded, proper One Nation Tories have either been booted out of the party or are standing down at the next election, and that's including some Tories who haven't had the whip removed. Yeah. They've been told, they've said, like Justine Greening, good Rotherham girl, but she's said, look, I'm not doing this anymore. You know what I mean? And that's really sad because and now the Tory party is, like you said earlier, it's becoming the Brexit party, and a lot of this isn't just to deliver Brexit. It is to save the Tory party now, isn't it? They are fighting for their lives.
Patel, the daughter of immigrants, stand up and say, Graham, who was born in this country and whose parents were born in this country, can no longer enjoy the freedom of movement to go and live and study and buy a house and start a business and retire in 27 other countries.
Yeah.
And she receives a massive cheer from a load of old white men. And I am like,
seriously,
talk about kicking away the ladder, love.
Yeah. Oh.
So she has come, her parents have come over. And one point I will make before we end today, because I told someone this week and they didn't even know. Boris Johnson is an immigrant.
He is.
He was not born on the soil of this nation. I was. Were you born here?
Yes, I was. I was born.
Do you think that we have more of a right to, be here than he does? Well, because he was born in America.
Well, my daughter was born overseas, but that still made her a British citizen.
Yeah.
But then you've got people like Donald Trump who thinks that Barack Obama was born in Kenya.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But Boris Johnson can run for president of the United States.
Oh, he can, yeah.
Because he was born in America.
In America.
I had no problem with immigration.
No.
I have no problem whatsoever.
No, I have a problem.
I was being facetious.
I have a problem with Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson is an immigrant.
Yep.
And a liar. And a scumbag. And he
philanderer.
gave over £100,000 of taxpayers' money
to an ex-model,
to a woman who he was cheating on his mistress with.
No, he wasn't. He was getting technology lessons.
He was cheating on his mistress.
Technology lessons.
He was already cheating on his wife, and then did he have a wife then? Or was he married?
He was married.
So he was married. He had a mistress, and he was cheating on his mistress with his technology
consultant.
Consultant. And
Yeah.
this guy is the moral centre of the British Empire.
And he said humbug to people worrying about being murdered and raped.
Yeah.
What a crackerjack, Jai. Here's to the EU. Thanks for watching. Hope we haven't bored you to tears. Graham and I have both got a bit of Brexit fatigue, I think, and but we hope we've gone up from 31 to 32%.
I do hope. Anyway, so yeah, here's the EU. Cheers.
Cheers.
Keep fighting.
Keep fighting.